Hello, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or, of course, if you are watching on our fast-growing YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. That is Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me for another UNC football ISO series podcast, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ, here to talk about Zach Rice, true freshman offensive lineman Zach Rice, in this edition of our ISO series. But before we dive into Zach Rice, I want to go ahead and give a shout out to our sponsor on this podcast, openingdaygame.com. Here's what they do. They list the number one sports bars in over 1,200 U.S. cities. When you visit their website, download the app. It's featured on the app as well. You can go to over 1,200 U.S. cities, and in less than 60 seconds, you were able to identify the best sports bar in a given city. So if you travel a lot, if you're a guy that goes around the country a lot, if you're a guy that loves sports bars, loves checking them out. I know I'm the same way. When I go to a new city, I usually like to kind of, especially to cover a game or something like that, night before, maybe go grab some food, grab a beer. I love to see if I can find some local places that I haven't been to instead of going to these chain restaurants you can go to in any city across the United States. This app, this website, Opening Day Game, allows you to do that. If you go to the website, openingdaygame.com, there's a button to click that'll take you directly to where you can download the app and use that that bar feature is where you can find those bars in over 1,200 U.S. cities. So check them out, openingdaygame.com. Make sure you download the app. The link to their website is in the description below. Okay, AJ. Zach Rice, a guy that I'm a big fan of. I got to cover his recruitment. He's also, I think, a little bit biased on my end. He's from my hometown of Lynchburg, Virginia. So there's that connection there as well. I shot an ISO of him during the spring game, so I got to see him up close and personal during that. But before I discuss that, what are your kind of thoughts on Zach Rice, 5-star prospect coming into Carolina? Because I think he's going to be a guy that Carolina fans are going to love sooner rather than later.
Well, I'm always propping up DC area guys because I'm from DC, so Northern Virginia. So it's okay if you prop up a Lynchburg guy.
It doesn't happen very often.
They don't come along very often. No, so when you have the opportunity, grab onto it.
You got to grab it, man. You got to hold on to it.
But actually, I always refer to going back to when you and I first saw him. You and I were in the middle of the pandemic. Coach Glover had a camp up there in the Tidewater area in Virginia Beach, right down the road from Tony Grimes' high school. Princess A, and it was at the complex. Right, it was
at the huge. I can't remember what it's called.
It's like not even a mile from Princess Anne High School.
Yep.
And we talked to 4 guys that day. By the way, we talked to Tony Grimes, talked to George Pettaway, Tyshawn Chapman, and Zach Rice, and they all ended up committing in that class. So Zach Rice, or in that group anyway, Zach Rice was unbelievably impressive that day. Talking to him, I thought I was talking to a kid who was a senior in college. Watching him move in the drills, it was hard to believe that a rising junior in high school of that size was that agile, had that kind of balance, that kind of footwork, and was almost smooth and fluid in his movement. So jump ahead 2 years, and we're now almost 2 years exactly from that weekend.
Wild.
Seeing him in spring practice this year was just a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, a little bit more refined, an older version of what we saw that day in Virginia Beach. And it was not a lot of surprise that at the time during spring practice, he was often working with the ones. Now, Spencer Rowland from Harvard is back or is in town. I don't know what that will do to the situation, but Zach got a ton of quality reps this spring. I would be a little surprised if he starts the Florida A&M game.
Yeah,
and the only reason I'm even mentioning that is because I'm one of these guys that tells people about true freshman offensive linemen, especially they're not going to see the field. They're rarely going to see the field because that just doesn't happen very often. Zach is one of those rare talents that if he did start, I think he could play to the level of a guy much older. I think he'd be starter worthy at some point during his freshman year. But that's an old group he's with. All these other guys are 22, 23. By the season, be 24 years old. And Zach doesn't have the experience that they have. There are some things still missing that he will acquire with time. And they brought in Spencer Rowland for a reason. Mac has said many times, we're not going to bring in a transfer unless they're going to start. We're not going to bring in a guy just for depth. We're going to bring in a guy that's going to get on the field and he's going to play and he's going to be a prominent part of what we're doing. And that's what they're doing with Corey Gaynor at center as well. So I think Zach has unbelievable potential. He's in first round NFL potential. Anybody who watches him, anybody you talk to around the program will tell you that. Whether or not he gets to that point, it remains to be seen what kind of player he develops into. I think that there's a lot there as far as the development goes. I think there's a fast pace to his development. What I saw first day of practice, what I saw later on toward the end of spring practice, we kind of missed a lot of stuff that wasn't available because the NCAA tournament, we were all away covering that. And then the spring game. I just think it's a matter of time before Zach Rice is an all-ACC offensive lineman. I know generally, I'm not one of those guys that throws that kind of stuff out there loosely. I'm not one of those guys that uses the word great loosely. For all the old dudes in here, I'm not exactly Sparky Anderson. Okay, I don't go that route. Sparky Anderson, for you young people, former major league manager who thought that there were 800 guys with the greatest player in the game. So he called everybody great. I'm not that guy.
No, you're not.
But I think Zach Rice has the kind of potential that you rarely see, certainly at North Carolina.
Yeah, most definitely.
And so that's the kind of guy he's definitely going to be at some point. Whether he's, how close is he to that guy by November? I don't know. It's going to be kind of fun and interesting to watch this process play out.
Agreed. I mean, 6'6", 315 pounds, true freshman, 5-star recruit, one of the top players in the country coming into Carolina. And he stood out. I'm glad you mentioned that camp because he stood out so much during that. And I had some question marks coming into college, and I'll preface this before I talk about the spring game, just because of the level, not necessarily level he was playing. He went to Liberty Christian Academy, which is actually, for those who know about Liberty University, is essentially they play in Liberty University's football stadium. So it's a small kind of Christian academy in that area. I had actually a couple of friends who went there years ago. And just, Zach Rice is bigger, he's faster, he's stronger than the guys he's playing with across the offensive line and, going up against defensively on a consistent basis. And that's he came with this mantra of his thing is pancaking kids. And if you go watch his high school tapes, he pancaked a lot of kids. So that was really my only question mark. But when I looked at how he performed in camps, particularly the one we got to see at the highest level, he still dominated. He was still that good. So it's very easy to see why he was a 5-star. And I say this because I was so impressed with what I saw from him during the spring game. I know we've said it many a times, you can't take but so much away from the spring game. When you've got a true freshman guy going out, kind of getting the first reps, he was, that first drive of the spring game, he was out there and he did not look out of place. You can go watch the ISO that I shot on him. There was one particular play where he just manhandled, and I can't remember who it was. It was, I don't know if it was a defensive back or a linebacker. It might have even been Cedric Gray. I cannot remember. But just handled him blocking wise with ease. And the guy just couldn't get away. And I remember at that point being like, okay, Zach Rice, I think he's got the physicality already to make an impact if he was called and needed to. And he looked so impressive and did not look out of place by any means during the spring game. So I do agree with you. I don't think we see him start in the first game just because if you look at who's there on that offensive line, some of the transfers that they've come in, but just the upside that he has. And okay, if we need to throw Zach Rice in, if Carolina's in that position, I'm kind of speaking from Mac Brown's perspective. He's sitting on the sidelines like, hey, if we need to throw Zach Rice in, I don't think he's a guy that's going to go in there and look like a, deer in headlights. I think he's ready. He has the physicality, the attitude, great kid, comes from a great family as well. So I'm really, really excited to see what Zach Rice can do because like you said, when you look at guys, true freshmen, particularly on the offensive line that come in as true freshmen, he stands out. He looks the part and he looks like a guy and it's no surprise when you look at how highly rated he was and recruited he was. I think he has all the intangibles there, like you said, to be an all ACC caliber offensive lineman, potentially an All-American at some point. I really do believe he has that potential because he is a very, very good football player.
When we got to see a practice late in spring practice, it was a full pad practice, which is important because they're very different when, like the first one, they're just wearing helmets basically, right? And the thing that really jumped out at me about him then was I looked at the offensive line, and we talked about this in a pod I think we did back in April, I guess it was, early April. And one of the notes I wrote is that you've got all these older dudes in that group, like the ones who are going to play for the most part are all 22, 23 years old, stuff like that. And then you got this guy who's still 18 at the time. And when you walk up to that group, if you didn't know who was what number, you wouldn't be able to immediately pick out the 18-year-old. Mm-hmm. And it was not just because of how big he is. It was mannerisms, how he comported himself, how he interacted with the other guys. He was interacting with the William Barneses and with the Awesome Richards and with the Brian Andersons as if he's been around for a few years. And I think that's really important because the one position group where you're guaranteed contact on every snap, and usually head-on-head contact, is on the offensive line. And you have to be extraordinarily confident. You have to have all the physical things, but you got to be smart and you got to be confident. You have to be mentally strong. And that just kind of showed me, like, this kid's just, he needs this next step. He needs to be pushed this, and he's probably going to be able to handle it. Mm-hmm. So whether or not he starts this year, I don't really think matters, because in a way, if he doesn't, that's probably a really good sign for Carolina. That means Spencer Rowland is the real deal. That means all those older guys up front are playing at a fairly high level, certainly enough to be on the field. And it also means that there's not a lot of pressure on Zach. He can sort of ease in. He's going to play a lot the first few games, for sure. They're going to be in situations, I think, where they'll be comfortable using him. Then there's the open date, and then there's Notre Dame. We're going to find out exactly what the staff thinks of him at that point in time, September 24th, when Notre Dame's down.
Yeah.
You know, if he's playing 30 snaps against Notre Dame, then the staff probably projects, maybe by November he's a starter. Mm-hmm. Or the high projections here, right? Mm-hmm. If he doesn't play on the offensive line against Notre Dame, only gets a few snaps, that means that they recognize he's full in the middle of a process that so many of these young offensive linemen go through. It's just a matter of working his way through. I think it's probably going to be more closer to that, simply because you don't want to rush it. There's no need to rush it. He's going to get on the field. He's going to be a starter in year 2 for sure. And if the track is 3 years to the NFL, then good for Zach and good for Carolina, because that will certainly benefit both.
Absolutely. He's a big time player. He's a guy I think goes without saying, pretty confident that he's going to make a name for himself in Carolina. I really do believe he's a guy that will play in the NFL one day. And I think honestly, we've been saying since we first saw him in high school and when Carolina really got him. He's that good of a player and that good of a prospect. And you never know how things can work out. But barring you stay healthy and continue to develop, he's going to be a player that Carolina fans absolutely love. So good place to wrap this one up, AJ. First true freshman I think we've done in our ISO series this year as well. And Zach Rice is a big-time true freshman for the Tar Heels. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Make sure you tune into the rest of our ISO series podcast. Just go to our YouTube channel, click the playlist tab, and you'll find it right there. I believe it's just called ISO series. You can go watch all of them, even going back to last year as well, if you want to go back in memory lane a little bit. Like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well. Make sure you check out openingdaygame.com. Again, link is in the description below. Go download that app. Awesome app and awesome website. Really excited to be partnered with them. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks.